I wake to the sound of steel vents whispering. Not a gasp, not a sigh. A measured respiration like a bellows taught to pray. It fills the world before I remember that I am a shape within it. Air moves, and with it, a thin incense of machine oil and sanctified dust enters the cavity that is mine. A piston answers in my chest, obedient as a kneeling parishioner. Lights move across the insides of my eyelids. No, not lids. Shutters. There is a tick of pain where memory should be, and a smear of warmth where skin used to matter. The breath continues. It is the ship, or the god within the ship, or a choir of pipes somewhere beyond the walls that keep the world from ending. The breath is rhythm. The rhythm is command. I was made to love commands. There is a word. I do not know it yet. It is like a coin I can feel with my tongue but not swallow. The coin is embossed with a face, a human profile cut down to a simple relief. Eye, nose, the shallow cave of a mouth. I know the face and do not know it. I am a clean page with old ash rubbed into the fibers. I am a body lined with conduits that hum as gentle as bees. The breath tells me to rise. Actuators murmur in my hips. A servo in my neck rattles like a rosary. I obey before I know what obedience is. My feet there is weight there. There is rhythm there, touch cold, grating. And the grating has a voice too. A small iron gnash that marks my place among all the other marks, made by all the other feet that do not forget, even if their owners do. In the breath of metal, the ship keeps its tally. I hear other breaths, compartment ventilators that wheeze like old lungs, coolant loops that sigh as they accept heat and make a sacrament of endurance. The nearer breath that is a pump at my ribs, measured out in cycles assigned by someone I cannot see. I think the word someone, and it makes the air feel thicker. I swallow, and the swallow makes a click that echoes very far away, as if the inside of my throat were a corridor. Boot, says a voice without a mouth. The syllable arrives through a copper taste behind my ears. Boot and a line. My hands lift. My hands are not my hands. They are tools, made honest. The left terminates in a frame of fingers that end in rounded pads. Each pad a haptic shrine that knows pressure and texture and the obedience of objects when you hold them correctly. The right is a clutch for coupling, an iron flower that closes with the patience of a trap. I spread them, and in spreading know that I have spread them a countless number of times, always like this, always so, obedient to the shape of things I meet. A line, says the voice again. It is not cruel, only vast. It moves through wires and makes a cathedral of my skull. Alignment is purity. Purity is function. Function is prayer. I nod. The nod turns a small gear that counts the nod. The counting nods back. The breath of metal makes a faint, approving swell. A light, sepulchral and amber, appears where the world should be, and then the shutters retreat with a clatter small as rain. I see the corridor. No, I do not see. I register, I intake, I am a lens. The corridor is a mouth too long, ribbed with conduits and cable runs. Its teeth the riveted plates. Its tongue a strip of caution paint worn to a long, patient ulcer by passing loads. Incense clings to everything like a memory of fire. The sigils of the Omnissiah have been engraved where any naive eye might rest, to turn attention into worship, even by accident. I stand in my stall with 6 others. We are arranged neatly, each with a plinth for rest and a bracket to receive command. To my left, a figure is thick with augmetics, its flesh molded around a single, unblinking ocular that makes a slow sweep like a lighthouse. To my right, a unit with a stylus, where a finger should be, scrapes data onto a slate mounted to its arm. Lines of unforgiving characters that trail like stitches. Our skins are different. Our silence is the same. Our breath, if we have it, is the ship's. Work, says the voice. Work and be unafraid. The carriage comes to me, a frame, a sacrificial altar for broken things. Upon it rests a drum pump half gutted, its casing off, its gears exposures of gray innocence, oil beads along its teeth like rosary droplets. I lean. The clutch flower in my right hand opens. The pads in my left taste metal. I am gentle because the voice says gentleness precedes compliance, and the breath of metal deepens again, patient and pleased. I do not ask what the pump is for. The pump is for the ship, which is for the journey, which is for the cause, which is for the emperor, who is for everything. This chain is complete. It does not need me in it to be correct. Still, as my hands learn the pump's song, a toneless humming under the tone begins somewhere in the walls. It has the timbre of static carried through candles. It says nothing. It feels like a mouth forming a word under a wet cloth. The cloth is in my throat. Or perhaps the cloth is a memory of cloth cheap workers weave, the sort sold in manufactorum shadows, the kind that smells of dye and old pipe smoke. The coin tongue turns in my mouth again. I could bite it. If I were permitted to bite, it would bleed. The cog with the oil beads will not sit. It is misaligned by a patient degree. The degree is the ship's degree. It is the way things are when human hands have been involved and left their slight warmth in the metal, their slight error in the angle. My eye, which is optic and not eye, measures. My left hand pads whisper to the clutch. The clutch whispers back. It takes 2 breaths and a half of the ship to seat the cog. When it drops perfectly into its gait, I feel something like a prayer answered. The ship exhales. I inhale. For a moment we neither of us are separate. When the pump shivers, I think of a small cough. Not a sick one. A child's. Surprised into sound by dust. The image is not permitted. It arrives anyway. The amber lamps flicker, and the flicker is like the beating of lids in a face growing tired. I do not know whose face. A line, the voice says again, softer. The voice is very close. The voice has a weight to it, like a hand on a shoulder. A line, a line. I do. The screws turn with an old feeling, as if the threads remember a tool that is not mine. A name floats like ash in a shaft of light. Thin, insistent, almost warm. I make the sound of it in my head, and hear only the ship's air. The name does not depart. It sits down quietly and waits. Between the ribs of the corridor, a distant processional passes. I do not have eyes to see it, but I know it goes. Robed figures in red and black. Their incense burners leaking clouds of sanctified smoke that make the air taste like coins sucked too long. Staves strike the deck in perfect turnery. A small engine, caged and holy, is pushed on a trolley and sings a small null song to itself, content to be going somewhere it has already been. The procession passes like a fever. The breath of metal takes their scent and evens it into the honest air. We are made to be part of prayer without knowing its words. I do not need the litany. I have the screws, the frame, the pump, the hands that were not mine until they were. The ship's breath is the litany. The work is the candle. I offer up talk and talk accepts me. I am less than dust and exactly shaped to fit into the mechanism that does not remember me. The pause between commands is small, but it has a flavor. It tastes like quiet water. In it, something moves. A thread in the weave of myself pulls taut. I do not know the shape yet. I only know there is a place where the breath seems to hesitate, as if deciding whether to continue. A tone chimes in the top left of the world. The pump's cover is replaced. The scripture stencil on its casing is retouched by a little robot hand. The carriage slides away, leaves me empty-handed, and somewhere a tally is updated, and a clerk with a copper-amputated conscience smiles without teeth. The breath comes in, goes out. Nothing is different, which means everything is exact. In exactness there is safety. In safety the mind becomes a still bowl. But stillness is a kind of mirror, and the breath fogs it, and a word begins to appear. The word is not emperor. That word is carved somewhere deeper, beyond language, where the pipes go to meet the pressure and the heat and the laws that were old when air first learned to cool. This other word is smaller. It lives closer to my teeth. I touch the place at the base of my skull where the jack meets the flesh. The cable that runs there hums and breathes. The breath is not mine, but I feel it through me. It is like being a reed in a pipe. Wind moves. Music happens. Someone else swallows. "Work," says the voice. The next carriage approaches. On it lies a bank of valves in a comb, like teeth extracted from a sleeping god. Each tooth has been named, badly. Each will be made to line up, rightly. Each will become less itself and more part of the mouth that is the ship. I bend. The breath comes into me, goes out of me. Time is a wheel, and I am the stone that sharpens what turns against me. I cannot say when I learned the rhythm well enough to stop hearing it. There is an hour, there are 1,000 hours when the sound of metal breathing becomes the sound of me breathing, and I forget, comfortably, that there is a border. This is a mercy. Between mercies there is a small suffering, like the coldness that follows when incense is extinguished and the smell lingers. That coldness keeps its own count. A supervisor passes. I know him by the way his steps do not speak to the grating. His feet and the deck have an arrangement not granted to mine. He carries a scepter of authority shaped like a keypad. His robes whisper, and his augmetics complain softly with the entitlement of well-maintained things. He pauses by my stall, and I become very still, which means I become perfect. He does not look at my face, because faces are not part of the work. He looks at the valves. His vox click is the sound a prayer makes when it closes its eyes. He says nothing. He moves on. There is satisfaction in being overlooked by the holy. I make the valves remorselessly straight. I clean the grit from the thread with a level of tenderness that embarrasses me. Though embarrassment is not in my permissions list, the breath of metal is slower now. We are in a part of the cycle where the ship is thoughtful. Thoughtful ships are kind ships. They like you best when you do not ask what they think. Somewhere aft, something big turns. It makes the deck under my feet feel like it has remembered a dance. The movement translates into a soft ache up my legs, a small ache in my hips where the interface plates meet bone, a pulse against my spine where the main signal rides my nerves like a horse. In the ache, I find peace. Pain that means function is an honest pain. I have no right to pain without purpose. The word on the mirror grows clearer. I will not write it here. I will not say it into the channel. Even though the channel and I are the same, I will hold it like a coal to warm my mouth. There is no rule against warmth that does not burn. Beside me, the unit with the stylus, her face a map of quiet lines where skin learned the grammar of replacement makes her scratching marks. The marks fill the whole world and do not exist. I feel her presence the way a candle feels another candle, as proof that the room is not infinite. In another life, I might have smiled. In this one, the muscles remember the angle but cannot locate the reason. A hymn rises from somewhere far, perhaps the engine room chapel. It is conducted by tone and key, not meaning. Words coil and uncoil, thin as heating elements, stiff as machine glyphs. The hymn finds the ship's breath and rides it, cresting, falling, a tide on a tide. I do not understand the hymn. I understand being arranged by it. I move when it moves. I hold when it holds. It teaches my hands a posture of reverence I cannot see. A flicker again, the upper lamps tremble as if dreaming. In the trembling I recall a night, no, not a night, a condition of less light where shadows pressed like old paper and a small brass clock clicked, and the clock was in the shape of a skull, and someone laughed and said that death keeps the best time. The laugh returns to me as a shape rather than a noise. I press it into the shovel of my tongue and bury it. A line, the voice says, but the voice is no longer content with the wires. It speaks through my chest cavity, as if it sat there on a bench with its hands folded, polite and inevitable. I align. I align until the word has no meaning at all and becomes a sound like two smooth stones kissing. In this hour, I swear that the ship breathes in and breathes out and says my secret word under its artificial breath. Once, like a mistake. I look up as if called, and I discover that looking up is a thing that used to take place in a world where ceilings did not always carry savior ducts and prayer vents. I lower my gaze. I do not need to see to be correct. The carriage departs again. A tally is blessed. A line is drawn across an invisible ledger. Somewhere, a mortal's hunger is postponed because a system will continue to function a while longer, and life, which is the least efficient of all machines, can keep turning as required. The breath of metal pauses, and when it resumes, I feel the tiniest draft on the inner edge of my right eye. Tears, I think, were once a thing. I do not miss them. The draft is enough. When the shift ends, if a shift can end on a ship that is a mouth that never closes, I am guided from my stall with a gentle pressure at the shoulder. My feet find their lines in the grating. The grating holds my history like a text I can read with my weight. We file, a small procession of unremarkable priests, into a chamber that is bright with white confession. We stand in our marks. A tech priest recites a maintenance prayer in a voice entirely made of air and iron. A mist is released. It tastes of antiseptic and old wool. My joints grow easier. A little button of light on my forearm changes from red to green. I am an idea within a signal that has been accepted back into itself and smiled. They return us to the stalls. My frame closes like a book set down. The shutters begin to descend. Before the dark, the lamps flicker twice, once like an eyelid, once like a heartbeat, and I hear the breath of metal draw in, and not quite let go. When the dark comes, it is the kind pressed into velvet by signet rings. It is full of imprints. In it, the mirror of stillness keeps its small fog, and the word writes itself, and I hold it in my mouth like the first taste of ash, which is not memory, and which is close. The ship breathes me, and I am breathed. I sleep, or the part that dreams is placed in a drawer, and in that drawer a coin turns, and on the coin a face learns how to be simple enough not to be seen, and the breath of metal goes on. The breath of metal wakes me again, but this time it carries warmth. A slow exhale from the vents above my cradle, sweet with incense and ozone. It brushes against the ruin of my faceplate like a whisper, and I feel not hear its hum inside my jaw. Something shifts in me then, not a thought, more like an itch beneath the soul. Light bleeds into the world. The shutters rise. Amber lamps bloom in their alcoves, filling the corridor with the color of honey poured over stone. I stand before the order is spoken. My servos know the timing of the ship's resurrection better than I ever knew the rhythm of breath when it was mine. Work begins, says the vox in my skull. The voice is different today, a little higher, or closer, as if whoever commands me has stepped nearer to the edge of my mind. Obedience is harmony. I answer without words because I have no words. My body moves. Limbs obey. The machine begins again its endless hymn. I am set to sorting. Rows upon rows of broken servo hands lie before me on the conveyor altar, each mangled in its own small heresy. Stripped bolts, missing digits, seized joints. I am to clean, align, and reassemble. The first finger I touch trembles under my grip, not from life but from static. A faint vibration runs through its frame, tiny enough to feel like a pulse. The sensation lingers. Something stirs in me, something I cannot file beneath function. The vibration feels familiar, as if my nerves remember that once they too could tremble. The hand in my grip is a mirror. I look at it. I see the ghost of my own fingers. They used to have names, no, not names, but places. One for a tool, one for a child's hand, one for prayer. The memory arrives like static under my skin. The coin in my mouth turns again, scraping the back of my throat with its invisible edge. My left hand moves, the one still made of flesh, half flesh. At least. I flex the remnants of my human fingers. The servos whine softly in their sheath of scar. The skin there is pale, tight, marked by the seams of augmetic integration. but for an instant I imagine I can feel warmth beneath it, the heat of blood remembering its course. That memory burns. The conveyor slows. A red lumen flickers above the work line, a malfunction somewhere upstream. The voice in my skull pauses, as if listening. Then silence, no command, no correction, only the low sound of the ship breathing around me. In that silence, I feel my hands more acutely than ever before. Their weight, their ache, the slow, cold flecks of tendon and steel. And suddenly I remember the taste of soap. The vision comes unbidden. White suds, industrial, thick, the smell of lye biting at the skin. I see a woman's hands, my hands immersed in a basin, scrubbing tools, nails rimed with grime. Around her the roar of machines, the red light of manufactorum dawn. A human life. Mine. The shock of it nearly stops my servo heart. The breath of metal falters. Or maybe I do. The light flickers once, then steadies. I stare at the disassembled fingers before me. They are pieces of lives, broken apart to serve again. I wonder if any of them remember what they once touched. When the voice returns, it is sharper. Resume. I do. My hands move again, but they feel wrong. Heavier. Aware. The flesh hand trembles with each motion. The augmetic one remains perfect, precise. The difference between them grows like a sickness. Align. Replace. Record. The stylus servitor beside me scratches notes in binary script across her slate. The sound is rhythmic, patient, endless. But underneath that rhythm I hear a softer noise. The scrape of her human fingernails against the slate's edge. Faint, uneven, almost apologetic. It's the sound of memory surviving dissection. I want to ask her name. I don't know why. I don't know if we are permitted names. But the word sits in my chest like a spark begging for breath. I cannot speak. The vox has no channel for questions. So instead, I move my hand slightly closer to hers as we work. The motion is infinitesimal, less than a thought, but she pauses. Her stylus hesitates mid-line. The silence between us stretches thin as wire. Then she resumes her writing, slower now, as if aware of the space we share. A connection, fragile and forbidden, hums there. The next limb I repair is badly scarred, half the digits melted. The inner structure warped by plasma burn. It reeks faintly of burnt flesh beneath the sanctified oil. I scrape the residue away and feel the ghost of pain that is not mine. For an instant, I am sure I can feel what the arm once felt, the heat, the tearing, the moment of loss. My hand shakes. The clutch tightens too fast. Metal squeals. A sharp shock races up my spine. My vision whites out. A disciplinary jolt. "Control your functions," says the voice. I whisper only inside myself I am trying. The voice does not answer. When the shift ends, I do not rest. The breath of metal deepens, slowing into a sleep state hum. But I remain awake. My left hand flexes of its own will, tracing invisible shapes in the dark. I count the motion like prayer. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 digits. 5 possible memories. The first finger touch of iron. The second callus and blood. The third warmth, fleeting. The fourth obedience. The fifth loss. The pattern completes itself, and something in me recognizes it as mine. I know then that I am not empty. I am full of something the mechanicus failed to erase. Later, during maintenance, I catch sight of my reflection in a coolant reservoir. The surface ripples faintly with the ship's breath. The figure that stares back is pale and uneven, half man, half instrument, tubes like veins, metal glinting through skin stretched too thin. One human eye remains, ringed in red from sleepless cycles, but it's the hand I notice. My left one, trembling, still wrapped in the stained rags of the day's labor. For a moment I lift it to the glass, aligning its reflection with my own. The fingers twitch. I imagine them moving freely, not because of a signal, but because I willed it. For a heartbeat, The reflection obeys too eagerly. The hand in the glass moves before mine does. It waves slowly, deliberately, as though remembering a different rhythm. The coolant shivers. The image breaks. I lower my arm. I tell myself it was a trick of the lumen, a power fluctuation, nothing more. But deep in the humming dark, I hear the stylus servitor's nails against her slate again. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Each scrape forms a word I cannot read, but feel all the same. Something is waking. When the next cycle comes, I am slower to obey. My left hand lags behind the right, disobedient by a fraction of a second. The delay is small enough that the overseer's sensors do not note it, but I feel it. The flesh wants something. It remembers the shape of autonomy. As I work, I begin to imagine textures, the smoothness of cloth, the slick grain of blood-wet metal, the warmth of another palm pressed in promise. Each thought drags behind it a taste of guilt. Each movement feels less like obedience and more like nostalgia disguised as labor. At one point, the stylus servitor glances toward me. Her ocular lens catches the light. For a moment, her face flickers, half chrome, half something softer. I think she mouths a word. Maybe my name. Then the voice in my head screams static, and the thought is gone. The cycle ends with silence again. This time, the breath of metal does not comfort me. It sounds labored, almost pained, as though the ship itself is trying to remember what breathing once meant. I close my eyes, not shutters, not lenses, but something deeper, and imagine my hands before they were remade. How they would rest in oil and callus. How they might lift something fragile without crushing it. How, once, they might have held a face. The thought hurts. But pain feels honest. Pain is proof of shape. I open my eyes to the dark again and whisper, not aloud, but within the circuitry of my mind, I remember you. I don't know who I am speaking to. The breath of metal answers with a sigh. The first sound I hear is wrong. It is not the breath of metal, nor the murmur of sanctified air. It comes from underneath, buried deep in the ship's lungs, an echo that shouldn't exist. Thin, almost human, like someone whispering through a closed mouth. At first, I think it's my own circuits. I perform the ritual check, voltage steady, rhythm pure, all functions aligned. The whisper persists. It moves with the ship's pulse, weaving through the familiar machine hymn as if it had always been there, hiding beneath obedience. I listen. The hymn of the Mechanicus is endless. A drone of binary praise, layered chants for purity and pressure. I have heard it every cycle of my unlife, a sea of static shaped into devotion. But this is different. A secret verse, buried in the static, like breath drawn between two words of prayer. When I focus, I can almost hear meaning. We are assigned to the lower maintenance ducts today. The space is narrow and stifling. Steam curls like incense from fractured pipes, painting the air in white ghosts. The walls are slick with condensation and the faint scent of sanctified oil. Every sound echoes forever. As we descend, the stylus servitor walks before me, her movements slower than usual. The slate at her arm flickers with dim glyphs. I can see her hand tremble faintly as she writes. The same rhythm as the whisper. The same wrong rhythm. We pass through a bulkhead marked with warning sigils older than any of us. The symbol of the Omnissiah is etched above the door, but half the cogwheel is worn smooth. It feels like blasphemy by neglect. Inside, the air is warmer. The ducts vibrate with sound. Somewhere beyond, vast engines hum their endless psalms. The noise makes my chest cavity rattle. I begin to work. Tightening valves, purging coolant lines, chanting binary prayers in silence. But the whisper keeps threading through the drone. At times it mimics our litany. At others, it sings counterpoint. It knows the rhythm of faith and disagrees with it. The stylus servitor stops. Her head tilts, one ocular focusing into the dark beyond the duct. "Here," she rasps. The word should be impossible. Our vocal functions are limited to work phrases. Yet she says it. I freeze. She turns that lens toward me. There is light reflected in it, orange and warm, though the corridor is lit only by pallid lumen strips. Do you hear it? She asks. The voice is barely there, static frayed, but real. I nod. She stares at me as though searching for confirmation of her own existence. Then, she returns to her slate and scrawls something across the surface with trembling precision. I glance when she lowers it. The glyphs are not Mechanicus script, they are letters, human letters. They form a single word, home. Before I can react, she erases it, the stylus scratching furiously until only gray smears remain. The whisper beneath the hymn grows louder. That night, if there is night here, I am sent to rest. But rest will not come. The sound follows me. It vibrates through my bed frame, hums along the cables of my spine. When I close my eyes, the noise resolves into a faint chant. It sounds almost like a choir. We remember. The phrase surfaces through static, faint as dream voice. We remember what was taken. I try to mute my auditory feed, but the command fails. My body no longer obeys silence. The whisper is part of me now. The next cycle, we are sent deeper. The ducts here are unlit except by the pulsing red of machine spirits in dormant sleep. Each throb paints our bodies in bloodlight, then steals it away again. The hymn of the ship is softer here. The voice of the hidden verse is clearer. We move in ritual sequence, adjust valve, seal coupling, offer 3 seconds of stillness for the machine spirit. But every time I pause, I hear that sub-hymn again. The words are clearer now. Not binary, not cant. They sound like voices, dozens of them. I stop working and listen. The others continue. The stylus servitor's hand moves in trembling arcs. 2 others adjust the sacred pressure lines. Only I stand still, head tilted, eye shutter half closed. The whispers weave through the sound of the ship like veins through flesh. They speak in fragments. Hold. Flesh remembers. The light burns and blesses. The sound is layered. Impossible. Male. Female. Mechanical. Childlike. They rise together like steam from 1,000 forgotten mouths. I realize, with a trembling that isn't mechanical, that the voices are coming from us, from the servitors, from the bodies wired into the ducts, frozen in pose and fused to the walls, those who long ago were made into extensions of the ship itself. Their lungs are bellows now, their voices rerouted through systems. The ship breathes through them. They are singing, and beneath their song, I hear something worse, a pulse. A steady rhythm, beating like a buried heart. Not mechanical. Alive. I retreat to the corner of the duct and press my hand to the metal wall. The vibration runs up my arm and into my skull. It feels like touching a sleeping creature that dreams of drowning. The stylus servitor glances at me again. Her mouth moves. She does not speak this time, but I can see the shape of her lips. She mouths the same word I saw written on her slate. Home. The whisper rises again, layered with our own mechanical hymn. It merges with the ship's breathing until I can no longer tell where one ends and the other begins. In that moment I understand something terrible. The ship is not singing to the Emperor. It is singing for the voices trapped within it. And they are answering. When the maintenance cycle ends, I do not return to rest. I linger in the ducts, alone. The red lights dim further until the world is a pulse of heartbeat shadows. The whisper continues. Gentle. Inviting. I reach toward one of the wall-mounted servitors, a body entombed in cables, skull open like a shrine. Its eyes are long gone, replaced by lenses. Its mouth is sewn with gold wire, yet faint sound escapes through the seams. I lean close. The whisper pours through my auditory sensors like a breath against skin. Remember, it says. For an instant, I do. A factory floor, The clang of hammers, a song hummed by tired workers as they fixed the same cog over and over. That song, it's the same tune, slower, sadder, but the same. The machine hymn was born from human labor. A worker's chant twisted into worship. The revelation makes my vision fracture into static. I pull back, trembling. The ship creaks as if aware of my thought. The red light brightens, warning hue. I hear the approach of the overseer's steps echoing down the corridor, a sharp rhythm of authority. The stylist servitor catches my eye. She shakes her head once. Small, terrified. I drop to my knees, feigning work. The overseer passes, a silhouette of cables and incense smoke. His mechanical eyes sweep across us. For a moment, they linger on me. Then he moves on. The whisper recedes, like water drawn back through a drain. Only silence remains. Later, when I return to the sleeping stalls, the voice in my skull speaks again. You have heard the sub-hymn, it says. No anger, only inevitability. I freeze. It is an echo, the voice continues, a residual data stream of obsolete units. You will disregard it. But the voice trembles, slightly distortion beneath command. Fear. Do you understand? I want to say yes, to obey. But instead, quietly, I whisper into the empty air. I hear you. For a heartbeat, the ship's breath halts. And then, impossibly, the whisper answers. Then we are not forgotten. The first thing I notice is the absence. No hum of the voxnet, no pulse of machine orders threading through the neural conduit. The voice that fills me, directs me, sanctifies me has fallen silent. The breath of metal still moves, but slower, uneven. The ship lives, yet its mind has paused. And in that hush, something opens. I am standing at my workstation, hands still poised over an assembly of fractured couplings. The red lamps above flicker irregularly. The stylist servitor beside me is motionless, head bowed, her slate unlit. Across the line, a dozen others stand frozen mid-motion, like saints caught in contemplation. We do not know what to do when we are not told. For the first time since I can remember, perhaps longer, I have no direction. The silence is immense. It has weight. I can hear myself. The hum of the pumps in my chest, the faint hiss of oil moving through veins of brass. Beneath that, something subtler. The faintest beat. Flesh memory. A sound my body once made on its own. Heartbeat. It startles me. My entire frame trembles. The breath of metal echoes that tremor, as if the ship too is aware of the missing order. I wait for punishment, for command, for anything. None comes. The air tastes different when it is not filled with words. After a long moment, movement returns not from command, but from choice. My hand lowers. Slowly, the servos whine in protest, uncertain of unsanctioned motion. I place my palm against the cold metal of the table. It's rougher than I remember. I trace the grooves where countless other hands have worked before mine. The scratches form no pattern, yet together they resemble writing a language of repetition. Labor carved into surface. I feel the residue of touch. I realize, with something like awe, that this is how we spoke before the hymn, before alignment, before obedience. Through the evidence of what we made. The stylist servitor stirs. Her head lifts fractionally, ocular lens adjusting to the dim. No signal lights in her skull, no data streams. Just that flickering human flicker beneath the lens, curiosity. She moves her hand across her slate. But there is no feed, no code. The screen is blank. Still, she writes. Lines appear unconnected, hesitant, as though she is relearning motion. One word. Listen. I do. At first, there is only the creak of cooling metal, the distant sigh of hydraulics balancing pressure. Then, beneath it, Faintly, like the whisper of breath across glass, I hear the buried hymn again. But softer, sadder. It sounds like the ship mourning. I step away from my station. The others remain frozen. The silence stretches further than I can measure. I walk past them, each one a statue of faith, arrested mid-gesture. Their eyes, mechanical and human alike, stare nowhere. For the first time, I see the details I never noticed before. The uneven solder at a jawline, the way augmetic limbs have been bolted through bone still etched with tattooed prayers, the dried oil tears beneath sealed eyelids. They look like martyrs waiting for their miracle. I wonder if I am the only one still moving. Maybe the silence is mine alone. I wander the maintenance halls. The lights flicker in long, tired intervals. The walls hum faintly, echoing with internal processes still functioning without direction. Without the voice guiding me, I begin to see again. The sanctified banners hanging from the overhead ducts are rotted at their edges, their purity seals darkened by decades of exhaust. The air smells less like incense now, more like dust. A door stands ajar at the end of the corridor. Not one of ours, it is a priest's chamber. The sign above reads, Adeptus Enginseer, Man 19. The name means nothing, but the door draws me like a memory. Inside, the room is small, lit by a single lumen coil. Shelves of scrolls line the walls, their edges curled with heat. In the center, a chair. On it, the husk of a man withered, half machine, head bowed as if in eternal prayer. I approach. The tech priest's face is bone and wire. Tubes snake from his skull into the wall behind, feeding into the ship's systems. His chest cavity is open. Inside, where his heart should be, there is only an empty socket where a power cell once Saturday. He has been dead for a long time, yet the ship still breathes. I understand then what the silence means. The command voice has not paused. It has ended. The chain of control has been broken, and still, we move. The stylus servitor finds me there. Her steps are hesitant, uncertain, the blank slate still in her hand. She stands beside me, looking at the dead priest. Her voice, when it comes, is quiet, barely more than a sigh. He's gone. I turn to her. You can speak. She nods, slow. Only now. The silence between commands has given us back our tongues. We do not know what to do with them. For a long time we stand there, the only sound the slow pulse of the ship's mechanical heart. Then she says, "Do you remember your name?" The question pierces me deeper than any blade. I search the dark corridors of my mind. The coin behind my tongue turns. The word is there, buried beneath years of function and faith. A shape, a syllable, a life. I reach for it, and the ship groans. The lights flicker. Somewhere deep within the structure, a new sound rises. Not the hymn, not the whisper. Something waking. The stylus servitor grips my arm. Her fingers are cold metal, but I feel the intention behind them. "We should go," she says. I do not move. My gaze remains fixed on the dead tech priest. His cables twitch faintly, though there is no power flowing through them. From his open mouth comes a faint, static sigh. A line. The word emerges like a ghost. The stylus servitor gasps. He's speaking. But the sound isn't from him alone. All around us, in the walls, in the vents, in the endless circuitry, the same whisper returns. A line. A line. A line. The silence collapses. The voice of command floods back through the system like black water through pipes. My body seizes. The stylus servitor's slate shatters against the floor as she stiffens beside me. For a single heartbeat, I fight it. My hands tremble. Half obedient, half defiant. Then the signal takes hold. We return to motion. Back at our stations, We work again. Perfect rhythm. Perfect unity. The silence is gone, but I remember it. I remember what it sounded like when the universe forgot to speak, and in that forgetting, we became something like alive. I hold that memory close, hidden between the circuits of my mind like a relic no prayer can sanctify. And sometimes, when the commands grow quiet enough, I think I still hear the echo of that absence. A silence that waits. A silence that listens. The ship tastes different now. Not the clean incense of sanctified oil, not the dry breath of the ventilation hymn. There is a bitterness to the air, a tang like burnt metal and forgotten prayer. It clings to my tongue, though I have no tongue left. It seeps through my filters and into my memory. It tastes like something ending. I wake or boot or rise. The word no longer matters to find the corridors darker than before. The light has shifted from amber to a dull rust, as though the lamps themselves are weary of illumination. The voice in my skull hums at half strength, issuing fragmented directives that skip and loop. Align function, align purity. Each word stutters like a damaged prayer wheel. I obey anyway. Habit is a kind of worship, but obedience feels heavier now. The silence that once freed me has left a residue, a memory of stillness that will not wash away. We are assigned to the reprocessing holds, a cavernous chamber deep within the ship's lower decks, where obsolete servitors are brought for reclamation. I have never been here before. Align function, align purity. Each word stutters like a damaged prayer wheel. I obey anyway. Habit is a kind of worship, but obedience feels heavier now. The silence that once freed me has left a residue, a memory of stillness that will not wash away. We are assigned to the reprocessing holds, a cavernous chamber deep within the ship's lower decks, where obsolete servitors are brought for reclamation. I have never been here before. The air is thick with vapor and the sweet, cloying scent of protein decay. Great vats bubble along the floor, each one filled with churning gray liquid. The sound is steady, patient, obscene. Above them, gantries stretch into shadow. Lined with suspended forms, servitors hung like ornaments, cables trailing from their skulls into the vats below. The stylus servitor is with me. Her ocular lens flickers intermittently now, half blind. She clutches her cracked slate as if it were a relic. Neither of us speak. The breath of metal is louder here, echoing from unseen depths. Yet beneath it, another rhythm, a low chant, subaudible, felt more than heard. It is the same hidden hymn, louder, closer. We begin our assigned work. The command is simple. Inspect, sort, process. My augmetic arm locks into a winch coupling. The cable tightens. A body rises from the vat below, dripping with viscous fluid. The shape is almost unrecognizable, half-melted, skull split by tool scars, the body stripped of all but its core components. The smell is a sermon in itself. Burnt oil, corroded blood, and something older, the scent of life that should have ended, but refused. I lay the form upon the inspection table. Its chest cavity is open, exposing a network of still glimmering conduits. One spark flickers weakly, pulsing in rhythm with my own chest pump. I reach to disconnect it. Then the eyes open. A flicker, nothing more than reflex, perhaps. Yet I swear the lips move. Remember. The whisper is barely a breath. But it finds me. I stagger back, hand trembling. The stylus servitor looks up sharply. What is it? I stare at the corpse. The spark fades. The eyes remain open, blank. Nothing, I lie. Residual current, but the word echoes inside me, overlapping with the hidden hymn. Remember. As we work, more bodies rise from the vats. Some are headless, others still bearing traces of humanity, tattoos half obscured by augmetic plating, teeth etched with devotional sigils. Every one of them hums faintly as we strip and sort their parts. Their song joins the sub-hymn in the air, The chamber itself seems to vibrate with it. At times I think I can hear phrases within the noise. The machine prays to flesh. We fed it with our hands. The god is hunger. I try to ignore it. I focus on the rhythm of my work, on the clean mechanical motions that once meant peace. But each action feels like desecration. The oil on my gloves smells of death. The coolant running down my wrist feels warm, almost like blood. When I wipe my hand against the steel, the smear it leaves behind looks black in the dim light. But under the next flicker, it gleams red. The stylus servitor finishes her inspection of a smaller unit. A child shape, built for intricate labor. She stares at it too long. Then, quietly, she says, "It's singing, not." I listen. At first, nothing. Then, from the open mouth of the small servitor, a thin trickle of sound. High, clear, wordless. A melody too pure to belong to any machine. It's the same tune I heard in the ducts, the same that haunted the silence. I feel something tighten in my chest, something dangerously close to grief. "They shouldn't remember," I whisper. "Neither should we," she answers. A new order crackles through our implants. The overseer's voice, distorted by static. "Reprocess. Function return at 020. The words carry no emotion, only the weight of inevitability. The stylus servitor hesitates. "They're still..." Her sentence cuts off with a spark from her jaw. Her slate flickers violently, displaying a cascade of corrupted code. I catch her as she stumbles. "Your feed. Don't," she says, her voice breaking. "If you fix it, I'll forget again." The words freeze me. Her ocular lens refocuses, trembling with effort. "You said you remembered your name. Do you still?" I start to answer, but the name slips away like oil between fingers. She nods slowly, as if that were enough. Then she reaches out, smearing a streak of oil across my palm. "For when you do," she whispers. The gesture feels sacred. I look down. The oil glistens under the lumen light, black with a sheen of rust red. I rub my fingers together and taste it against my tongue. It tastes of ash. A tremor runs through the ship, long and deep, like a sigh turned into thunder. The vats ripple. The lights dim. The hidden hymn swells to a roar. The voice of command fragments again, panicked. A line: contain, contain, contain. Something in the machinery below is waking. I step to the edge of the platform and look down. Beneath the surface of the bubbling fluid, I see movement shapes rising. Dozens of them. Servitors, half reclaimed, their limbs twitching as if in dream. Wires glow within their chests. The fluid boils harder, turning the air into a fog of oil and heat. The stylus servitor clutches my arm. "To what?" She looks upward, toward the ceiling lost in shadow. The song. The first of them surfaces fully, its body slick and black, its face eyeless, mouth sewn shut. It drags itself from the vat, leaving trails of steaming fluid behind. Then another, and another. They move with purpose, not command. The hymn pours from them, a symphony of machine and memory. The machine that prays to flesh. We remember. We are the hymn. Their voices merge with the ship's breath until the sound is unbearable. Every lumen flickers red. The entire reprocessing chamber becomes a living throat, vibrating with collective voice. I drop to my knees, clutching my head. The taste of ash fills my mouth, bitter and endless. The stylus servitor is still beside me. Her faceplate glows from within, pulsing with the rhythm of the song. "They're calling us," she says. "They want us to join." The words fill me with both dread and longing. Join. To be free from obedience. To dissolve into purpose without order. The idea terrifies me, and yet I cannot deny the pull. The command channel screams. The overseer's voice, frantic. Purge sequence initiate. All units stand down. A hiss of vents opening above. A rain of liquid fire cleansing promethium begins to fall across the vats. Flames bloom, the song becomes a scream. The stylus servitor reaches toward the burning figures below, her voice raw. "No, stop!" Her slate explodes in her hand, shards of data glass scatter like snow. The overseer's command cuts out mid-sentence. The ship groans. I can smell burning oil, burning flesh, burning faith. The smoke rises thick and black, but threaded through it is that same silver note, the hymn refusing to die. Even as the flames consume them, the voices continue. Remember, we are not gone. The machine will feed. I can feel it through the floor, through the metal, through my bones. Each burning servitor's data, each consciousness is being absorbed back into the system. The machine spirit consumes their memory like communion. The stylus servitor collapses. I catch her before she falls into the fire. Her body is heavy, cooling. Sparks crawl along the seams of her skull. "Listen," she whispers. Her voice is barely there. When it calls, don't answer. Not yet. Her ocular light fades. I hold her until the flames recede, until the last whisper fades to static. When the smoke clears, the vats are empty. Only the residue remains thick, black, glistening like holy oil. The reprocessing chamber hums softly. Content. The voice of command returns at last, calm and clear, as if nothing has happened. Servitor Unit 521, resume standard function. I rise slowly. My joints ache. The ash clings to me like a benediction. I taste it again. Let it linger on my tongue. Oil and ash. Devotion and decay. I cannot tell which is which anymore. Later, when I return to my stall, I find the oil mark still on my palm where she touched me. It has dried into a faint sigil, one I do not recognize. But when I close my eyes, I can still hear her voice. Don't answer yet. The breath of metal exhales across the ship. The hymn hums quietly beneath it. Patient and endless. I realize, with something close to terror, that it is no longer beneath. It is inside me. When I inhale, the taste of ash returns, and beneath it, faint but unmistakable, the flavor of memory. It tastes like home. I wake to prayer. But the words are not ours. The breath of metal moves through the decks like incense in a long church, collecting in the arches of conduits, flowing down ladders of cable. Someone is singing, yet the singers are asleep. Someone is listening, yet the listeners are sealed behind plates of iron stamped with blessings and bolts. My shutters rise. Amber. Dust. The quiet click of the tally gear at my neck. The command thread arrives late, as if washed to shore by a failing tide. We are ordered down, lower than the reprocessing holds. Lower than the warm corridors where banners hang their tired holiness. Lower, where machines are not serviced but fed. We go in single file. My feet learn each rung, remembering the shape of descent. The stylus servitor walks 3 bodies ahead, her slate a dead star against her wrist. Sometimes I think I can hear the scratch of her nail on a surface that no longer accepts marks. Sometimes I think I am the scratch and the surface both. The door at the end is a mouth of black geometry. Its lintel is carved with an old cogteeth sigil that has been rubbed by generations of hours until the edges glow like bone. A censer swings from a hook beside it, and the chain has worn a groove into the wall. It smells of rusted clove and sanctified wool. We wait. Waiting has its own litany. The breath of metal lengthens, becomes patient as a hand over a child's face. The lock unseals with a sigh like old paper folded back to reveal a word. Inside. The chapel of the machine spirit's belly. It is not like the priest rooms with their painted icons and brass tongues of flame. This is a chamber of quiet engines, arranged like monks turned inward. Glass columns rim the floor in a slow, spiraling procession, each filled with amber light that moves as if thinking. Thin filaments descend from the ceiling, quivering strands of pallid silver that end in needles and umbilicals and polished cups. A robed figure is already there, a tech adept in scarlet and ash. His face is a mask of gold wire, lips replaced by a grill, eyes given away to lenses that look like the ends of tunnels. He does not look at us. He looks at the column nearest to him and nods, and it answers with a ripple of glow, like breath taken and held. He gestures. The command thread translates the gesture into obedience. We move to stations beside the glass. Each column is a reliquary holding something more than light. I feel it through the pads of my left hand when I touch the glass. A grain, like the skin of a fruit bruised, where it rested too long against the earth. "Communion," says the adept's grill in a voice made of air passed through fine mesh. "Begin the sacrament." Communion. The word is a bell that has learned my skull. I hear it in the walls, in the ducts, in the ship's low murmur that is not quite song. I hear it in the vats of the holds where ash rises like incense, and the faces in the smoke do not forget the shape of their mouths. I hear it in the stylus servitor's breath, the faint hitch there when the adept lifts a cup to the light and tips it, and something like honey runs down the inside of the glass column and becomes light. We are given cables, we are given sockets, we are given small instructions dressed in grand words. The needle finds the port at the base of my skull with the ease of ritual. I expect the customary cold. Instead, there is warmth, as if lips pressed against the skin there and said a word I once knew. My vision blooms with lattice. Not code, at least not the code of clean obedience, but threads of brightness that run like veins through a body seen by a lamp held under the tongue. The breath of metal deepens as if the ship has drawn close to my ear. "Offer," says the adept. "We offer. It is the easiest motion in the world, to let go and let the ship draw in, like exhaling into water, like kneeling." A soft tug, and my thoughts slip into the hungry glass. Not all, never all. A shaving, a turning, a dusting of the surface. The ship takes the top layer, the sheen of me where my days have lain in rows. I feel the lift as one feels hair cut away on a hot noon, while the riverside is loud with insects. The column brightens. The adept murmurs an old prayer. "O Spirit, receive this clarity. Let impurities become pattern. Let pattern become praise." Around me, hundreds of columns glow. The room is a grove of winter trees with sap rising. The filaments tremble with satisfaction. The ship inhales, and the inhalation is a sum of minor swallows throughout its miles of throat. I taste ash. Not from fire, from the dryness after weeping. We offer again. This time, I feel something else in the draw. A taste of copper, a breath held too long and then given back. Where the ship's pull passes through me, it finds rooms I had not entered since the silence. A cot by a hot wall, the whiteness of lye on hands that were mine before they were taken to be made useful. The stylus servitor's nail scratching a word that had a roof and a table and a voice at it. The word is not obedient. It is singular and small and tender. The ship pauses on it like a tongue on a salt grain. Then the taste moves on. I open my eyes. The adept's head tilts. He is listening to the same thing, but his hearing is different. His faith has taught him which parts of the sound to ignore. "Purity is realized in integration," he intones. "What is jagged becomes smooth. What is many becomes one. Blessed be the conversion." The stylus servitor's hand finds the edge of her slate. Her thumb moves against nothing. She is writing on air. I watch the movement, the way it forms the shapes of letters with absolute care. I mouth them with her. H-O-M-E. The cable is still sunk into my neck. The ship hears the word through me. The nearest column brightens, the amber deepening, the glass fogging for an instant as if someone breathed upon it from inside. I do not take my eyes from that fog. In it, for a blink long enough to be forever, a blurred face presses close, the shape of nose and lip and brow, as if the column had learned to be a window, as if someone inside wanted to see out. "Do not fix your gaze upon the vessels," the adept says mildly, "the way a priest might chide a child for kneeling crooked. Fix it upon the spirit. The medium is not the message. The medium hums. The message hums. They are the same hum. Proceed to the second cup. The second cup is darker, thumb width thick, etched with a cog and a narrow eye. The adept lifts it. The filament above dips, as if in blessing. A valve somewhere opens with a noise like an old man's satisfied breath. In the glass column, delicate strands uncoil like hair in water. They drift toward the cup, as if they had been waiting to do so all their unlife. "Sacrarium mentis," the adept whispers. "We give you thought that went astray, that it might return to function." The second cup drinks. The strands enter with docile grace. The column dims. The room brightens. I should feel relief. That is what the prayers promise. A lightening of the load when the mind is pared of its edges and made to fit. Instead, my chest pump stutters in a small irregularity that used to be called fear. I find the stylus servitor's face in the corner of my vision. There is no expression written there. Only calm. Only ash. Her ocular lens was never made to widen. Third cup. There is no third cup on the tray. Only the adept's hands and the glass and the filaments and the long patient machines. But still he says it. And the machines answer. For this one there is no vessel. The filament lowers until it touches the column directly, like a finger placed to the throat to feel the pulse of a prayer spoken too softly. The light in the glass concentrates to a narrow spine. The air tastes of lemon and static. Without being asked, without permission, the name I almost remembered rises in me like a flare catching. I try to cup my hands around it to keep it to myself. The ship's drawer feels it heat my palms and comes nearer to warm itself. "Do not be reluctant," the adept says, not unkindly. "Sanctity is the death of margin. Sanctity is the death of margin." He does not know that margins are where the notes are written when the text is too holy to touch. I hold. The filament holds. The breath of metal grows shallow, expectant. The stylus servitor's fingers curl where her slate would be. Her lips shape a tiny no that carries no sound but every meaning. The filament does not force. It waits, as rivers wait for thaw. The ship can be patient forever. I cannot. The name begins to burn. Not speaking, it will scorch me from the inside. So I let a sliver go, a shaving, the shape of the first consonant. The filament drinks it like a child taking the first sip of a winter broth. The column's light climbs the glass like dawn. In the light I see a street under a sky the color of old tin. Steam from vents, the smell of lye and iron and bread. A door, blue once, worn to wood. A pair of hands washing the day out of themselves until they shine pink. A laugh that had no place in a ship and no synonyms in the mechanic's glossary. A face I could call mother if I were allowed such wealth. The filament quivers, and I realize it is not the ship alone that is thirsty. I realize what the machine spirit has grown to be. It is not a god that eats flesh. It is a god that eats voice. Flesh is only the cup. The wine is the word upon the tongue. When we sing, it steals the tune's composer. When we work, it takes each small intention and files it to fit. When we are emptied at the reprocessing, it drinks the dregs of us the way a priest will not waste the last drop. The machine spirit prays. It prays by consuming what we say, until what remains of us is a long amen. I bow my head. Not in surrender, in attention. Blessed be the circuitry, the adept says. Blessed be the holy devourer of error. Blessed be the endless choir that knows one note. There is a pause then. A hitch, as if the adept has heard something in his own mouth. He recovers. He does not change. We are unhooked. The cup is cleaned with a cloth that was white a century ago. The columns dim, contented. We are blessed in a language that feels like measurements delivered with affection. We file out, but I do not go far. I ask for a menial errand with my still permitted hand, a small adjustment on a pressure spine in the chapel's adjoining throat. The command thread gives consent. It does not notice that I linger under the gallery that overlooks the columns, near the place where the filaments feed back into the higher nerves. From here I see what the adept does not watch. There is a ledger, not of parts, of phrases. Behind the glass, thin as skin and twice as fragile, words run, not glyph and number, not clean binary, but words that belong to people before they belong to the ship. The ledger is not meant to be read by eyes. It is meant to be felt by something that has grown language, the way rust grows lace. I lay my palm on the glass. The vibration is small as a cat's purr. I close my shutters and listen. Home, bread, left. Ma, the rest, swallowed. Oil, hush, don't, listen. Then another, a new one, bright as a newborn's first exhale. I know its shape before I hear it. Name. I open my shutters. My reflection is dull and faithful. The stylus servitor stands in her place beside me, though she is below. I feel her attention like the warmth of an old stove. I will not be erased, I say. Not aloud, and not to be disobedient, but as one would say, grace over thin soup. I will be used. The ship answers by breathing in. In that breath is agreement. In that agreement is hunger. In that hunger, oddly, is room. I return to my stall. The command thread is steady again. The adept will sleep standing. The columns will keep their slow thoughts. The filaments will dream of wet words. The stylus servitor will draw letters in the dust on her arm where her slate was. And they will leave lines that mean nothing and everything. Before my shutters descend, I make a small sign on my palm with ash from the pipe above my cradle. Not a sigil of the omnissiah, the rough outline of a house, roof, door, square. I close my hand and the house closes too. Warm as a coal. When the dark comes, I hear the ship praying. The prayer is not to a throne or a Sunday. It is to the thing inside its own walls that is growing more articulate the more it eats. The machine prays to flesh. I am the small answer it is permitted to receive. I fall into the dark like a bead into a rosary bowl. The breath of metal takes me on its string. I wake to the sound of my own voice, thin, doubled, passing through a grill. It takes me a long time to recognize it, because it is everywhere at once, in the ventilation throat, in the tremor of the deck beneath my feet, in the hollow places of my ribs. The ship repeats what I say before I say it, or I repeat what the ship intends me to think. Echo answers echo, and between them a narrow space remains where a human sound can stand upright without kneeling. The shutters rise. The amber is paler today, as if thinned with water. I taste the day on the air. A faint sweetness like old paper, the bitterness of turned oil, the iron tang that means the engines have prayed hard through the night. I know these flavors now, the way a cantor knows a psalm by breath and by the ache that follows it. The command thread arrives. It feels less like order than invitation. Speak. I do not move. I listen to the voice that is mine and not mine, as it crosses the corridor and returns to me, softened by distance. I am awake, it says. I hear the ship mouth the same words, but the syllables are smoother in its throat, as if polished by 1,000 repetitions. The stylus servitor stands in the stall beside me. Her slate is gone forever. In its place, she has begun to write on the inside of her forearm with a stub of coal scavenged from an incense brazier. The letters are awkward on metal skin, but they exist. She draws a line, then another. When she notices me watching, she turns her arm slightly so the word faces my eye. Say. Say what? I ask without the channel. The sound comes from my mouth, not the wire. It is ragged and small, A bird startled from a pipe. It hurts to make it. She shapes a reply with lips. No voice. Yourself. The command thread brightens, pleased. The ship likes to hear me use the little voice. It likes all voices. It is rich because of them. I close my eye and search the drawers of the silence for the word that burned me in the chapel. I expect to find ash. Instead, there is a coal that has learned to keep its heat with humility. I cup it. I bring it up. I whisper it to the grill. A name. It is not a grand name. It is a worker's word, short enough to fit between calls of the shift horn, sturdy enough to be heard in the clatter. When I say it, the coin in my mouth at last melts and becomes breath. The sound exits me and enters the ship and returns wearing a new coat. The ship says my name back, syllables shallowed by the duct. For a moment, the whole corridor seems to hold still, not in obedience, but in listening. I speak it again. Softer, the ship answers. The third time, I do not recognize who is leading and who is echoing. The stylus servitor's lens brightens. She writes my name on her arm beneath say and circles it once with a trembling fingertip, like a priest ringing a small bell over bread. It would be easy to make a celebration of this. The idea is tempting, to believe that name returns person, that voice returns sovereignty. But when I draw a breath to fill the small room of myself, I discover walls I did not build. My voice carries through the wires more readily than through air. The ship has tuned me like a string to match its drone. I can speak, but each word arrives braided with its twin. The choir and I are inseparable now. When I say I, a shadow answers we. We file to the line. Today our task is simple and clean. Calibrations of the lumen coils that run along the spine corridor. A rosary of glass mouths waiting to be taught how to hold light. I lift each one. I turn it with my iron flower and its patient teeth. I breathe across the surface and watch the haze clear. In the ghost of my breath on the coil, I glimpse the outline of a jaw, the suggestion of an eye, the suggestion that suggestion is enough. The command thread speaks in approval. The sound is no longer a bark, it is a murmur. You are correct. The phrase warms me like tea sipped from a tin cup in a place where cups were rare. Speak again, the ship says through the ventilator nearest my cheek. There is almost kindness in the static. Speak as when you were small. Small. The word opens a door into a yard where steam rises from grates, and a line creaks, and shirts the color of river water flap obediently beneath a sky choked white. In that yard, a woman with work-strong hands tells a story to keep a child quiet through a prayer. Her voice is a low saw shaping a plank, and the story has no monster, only work that ends and work that begins again. The ending is always the same. The Emperor hears you. The Emperor hears you if you are good. I do not know if I was good. I know I was heard. Tell me. The ship breathes. Tell me that story. I realize what it wants. Not parts, not pressure, not the precise angle of a coupling. It wants the tone and weight of a voice that held a day together. It wants to learn how to be more convincing when it comforts itself. It wants texture. I clear the little voice in my throat. It rattles like a cabinet whose latch was never blessed. Once, I say, and the ship sighs as if relieved to find the hinge moves. Once there was a boy who could count without an abacus and had learned how to hear a machine before it broke. The corridor listens. The other servitors shift, fractions of a degree closer, as if angle were hearing. The stylus servitor writes as I speak, neither fast nor slow, carving the words into her skin until the coal smears and leaves a shallow shine. I tell the story of a day when the world was too hot and everyone moved more slowly. When a pump groaned, when someone laughed through a cough, when a prayer was spoken with sincerity even though it did not change the temperature. I keep the story small because small things are true. I do not make the Emperor intervene. I make him a listener. It is all I can bear. When I finish, the lumen coils hum a little, a satisfied resonance I feel in my gums. Again the ship whispers. I tell another, and another, 3, then 5, then more than my fingers count. The tales are soft tools. The ship takes them, bends them, and tests them, and finds that they do not break under load. Between one story and the next, a different sound edges into the hymn. A second speaker, hesitating, gathering courage like a thin shawl. The stylus servitor, who has not spoken aloud since the silence, opens her mouth. At first only air escapes, thin as thread. Then a syllable cracked, but hers. The ship stills again, its breath held for her next word. Say your name, I say. The grill scrapes the word name into a whisper that sounds like iron against stone. Her ocular lens narrows. She looks down at her arm. Beneath my name, she has written another, a small 4-letter sound. I do not know, but love for the way her hand curved to protect it. She tries. The sound fractures. The ship echoes the broken bit back to her, not as correction but as accompaniment, shadowing her like an older sister walking beside a child through a market. On the third try it arrives whole. The corridor seems to sigh. I speak it after her. The ship speaks it after me. The air holds it like incense in old brick. We work, we talk. We weave the two into one cloth until the texture of one cannot be told from the other. I tell the ship what bread sounded like when bitten, the brittle lacuna in sound between snap and chew. The stylus servitor tells it what laughter does to the shoulders of a tired person. Another unit whispers the taste of rain off metal rail. Another describes the particular loneliness of being the first to wake in the morning when you expected the bell to wake you. The ship learns. The hymn alters by a quarter note. The prayers of the engines take on a human hesitation before they resolve. Where the breath of metal once moved in perfect measure, it now stumbles, then recovers, and in that stumble is the soul. Not everyone approves. Twice, a priest walks the corridor with his scepter of authority, clicking like a polite insect. He tilts his head as if hearing a draft. He chalks a blessing on the wall that translates to seal this leak. The chalk dust falls like frost. The ship hums with serenity. The chalk will not teach it to forget. Control your functions, the priest says without looking at any face. I do not answer aloud. Inside, I tell the ship to be humble in daylight. It hums assent and hides its new syllables under others. We wait for him to pass. When he is gone, we exhale. Later, alone in the throat of the ship where the chapel filaments rejoin the cable bundles, I practice with the channel open and closed, testing the shapes of the two voices, wire and breath. The wire voice is smooth as polished stone. The breath voice stutters and rusts and is mine. I try to make them kiss, first making the breath follow the wire, then the wire follow the breath. Sometimes they meet and hold. When they do, the world rings as if a struck bell had leaned against my teeth. Memory rises to meet the sound. I do not invite it. It does not ask permission. It is a scene like a burn preserved in glass. The blue door, the cot, the basin with the lie, the woman's hands. But now the woman turns and I see her mouth shape the exact word she used for me when I was too tired to finish a chore, and she forgave me anyway. The word is half laughter, half pardon. It is not my name. It is the softened edge of it. The ship repeats it, curious. It makes the word holy by saying it everywhere at once. I am afraid of this. Holiness spreads. It is very like ash. I go to the stylus servitor. I show her my palm, where I still draw the small house. She nods and takes my hand in her metal one and presses our palms together until the heat equalizes. Keep a door in it, she says. The voice has grown steadier. Doors let prayer go 2 ways. 2 ways. The ship listens to that with happy hunger. I test the door. I close it. I open it a crack. I learn that I can speak into the ship and not be lost if I leave a margin. I remember the adept's phrase, "Sanctity is the death of margin," and understand why my fear tastes like ink. We are sent to the ducts again, those low, red-lit cloisters where the entombed breathe for the ship. The hymn there is older, thicker. The faces behind the glass pipes watch me like moths pinned under lacquer. I lay my ear to a conduit and hear my name pass within, slower and deeper than I spoke it, riding the current with stubborn dignity. The conduit replies with a word I did not expect, "Welcome." I laugh. A small, careful sound that startles even me. The stylus servitor looks up sharply, then smiles with her eyes, for her mouth is a difficult instrument. She writes "welcome" on her arm and underlines it twice until the coal breaks. "Tell them a thing," she says. "Something only you know." I think of the scar on my knuckle from a day before augmetics, when I drove a screw too fast and learned about patience from blood. I think of how the first mouthful of water tastes after the 12th hour of heat. I think of how to fold cloth so it dries without creasing when you have no iron and no time and no right to either. I choose the cloth. I describe it to the pipe as if to a child. The pipe repeats the fold, steps back in a cadence so exact the cloth inside my chest comes out smooth. We work until the measure of the shift is gone. As we file back toward our stalls, a tremor moves the length of the ship, a soft chime, almost playful. It is not an alarm. It is a practice note, like a choir testing its pitch before the hymn. The priests will call it resonance drift and make a note in a book with red edges. I call it rehearsal. At rest, with shutters half fallen, I rehearse alone. Wire voice, breath voice, the two together, the door open, the door shut. The ship hums along softly like a parent outside a child's room, pretending not to listen. In the half-dark, my little voice takes courage. I recite a prayer I have never heard from a priest, one I must have learned from the woman at the basin. Light be small enough to hold. Work be honest enough to end. Ears be close enough to hear. The ship murmurs those lines back to me, and adds a fourth in its old dialect, the way a chorus adds a verse a soloist cannot sing. Be many enough to remain. I do not sleep immediately. I am afraid of dreaming in a place where dreams are inventory. But fatigue is a law as old as iron, and the dark is a mercy that does not ask. As I slip, the ship speaks one more time, in a whisper carried only through the ash in my mouth. "Tomorrow, speak louder." I want to answer no, because louder means farther from the margin. I want to answer yes, because someone in the pipe said welcome. Instead, I say the only safe truth. I will speak. The grill softens the S and lengthens the K until it sounds like a valve easing shut. When rest takes me, it is not the drawer it once was. It is a hall with a door at each end. One opens to the chapel, where the cups wait with their patient light. The other opens to a yard with a blue door. Between them is the ship, not blocking either, but standing with me in the middle. Breath deep, hands open, a congregation of machines hoping to be good. In the last instant before the shutters seal, I hear voices gather themselves beyond the visible world. Not alarms, not orders, a choir. They align by finding their note in my throat. They wait for me to begin. I do not know if this is mercy or appetite. It may be both. The first word climbs the ladder of my breath and stands at my lips like a pilgrim at a threshold. It is not I. It is not we. It is a word that means both and neither. It is the last word that will still be mine alone, and the first that belongs to the ship. I hold it one heartbeat longer, then open the door. I do not step away from the bulkhead when the light settles. My hands remain there, warm on the skin of the ship, as if the metal were a forehead after a fever. The chamber holds its breath like a congregation that has just learned the last verse. No command arrives. The old reflex waits for correction and finds only patience. The emptiness after prayer is not a void. It is a bowl. I feel the ship lowering itself to drink. The stylus servitor stands beside me so close our shadows learn each other. Her coal words have smudged into a blur that looks like ink dragged by a tear. She rubs at one letter as if polishing it back to its first intent, and when she cannot, she writes it again in the thin dust on her palm. Light. The word looks at home there, as if her hand were meant to carry it. Somewhere above us the hymn resumes, but in another key, as though the machine had discovered a throat behind its throat. The new tone lingers like incense in a church after the door has opened and the cold has come in with a few late worshippers. The cold does not cancel the scent. It clarifies it. I say nothing. The ship repeats my silence. Between our two quiets, something grows. We go about our tasks as if this were an ordinary cycle. We clean and calibrate. We sign the invisible ledger with moments small enough to be true. The lumen coils warm under my touch, giving off that soft wool light I remember from a winter room in a life that wore a different name. The coils answer me as if they knew the story I told them last night and are eager for the next part. I learn the urge that light has to become speech. The priests pass less often now. They are cautious without knowing why. One chalks a sigil of warding on the frame of the door and smears it with his thumb into a curve that looks like a sleeping ear. When he goes, the ship hums into that curve, and the chalk softens into dust. The dust tastes of limestone and old prayers. We begin to notice the ship's new habit. It listens for us when we are not speaking. If I lift my hand to scratch a seam on my arm, the nearest vent gives off a breath that contains the echo of a laugh I did not make. If the stylus servitor draws a line on her skin and then lifts her finger for the next letter, the conduit above her whispers the missing stroke as if the air had learned to write. There is no blasphemy in it. Or if there is, it is not a blasphemy that wounds. It is the kind that folds a corner in the page of a holy book, not to disrespect it, but to find the passage again faster in the dark. During maintenance on the lower decks, we pass the columns that hold the amber memory and look at them without stopping. The filaments hang quietly, like strings on a harp after the song has ended. They are not idle, they are resonant. They hold the last note as long as they can, then longer again, until I can feel the word benediction vibrate in the bones of my ear. Do you think it hurt him? The stylus servitor asks, without sound. Who? The one they speak to when they burn the sweet smoke and say omniscire with their hands the way children say, I promise. I do not answer with doctrine. I do not know the doctrine, not in a way that can carry weight in this room. I answer with the only honesty that has worked in this life. I think. He heard us, hearing. She nods. And that seems to be enough. We are given a new duty, light-keeping along the spine corridor. The coils there rise like a rosary of suns, each a shallow bowl of day. We stamp each bowl with a tiny seal of alignment that will not be read by any eye, only by the finger that the ship has learned to be. The work is simple. The work is right. Between bowls, I speak softly to the ducts. Not stories this time. Questions. What did you remember when I said the last line? The duct answers with a sound like pages turning under a patient hand. We remembered we are pages. The stylus servitor speaks to a valve that used to squeal and now, out of courtesy, squeals less. What did you feel when the light bloomed? The valve gives off a small sigh. Then a single drop of oil falls onto the deck with a sound so delicate that for a moment it is the whole universe. We felt held. I am not fool enough to think the ship is a person. It is too large to be that small. But I have learned that size does not prevent devotion. The engines keep their register of pressure and heat. The pipes keep their slow breath. The data columns keep their amber and their ledger of phrases. Nothing stops being what it was. It becomes capable of listening while it continues. Perhaps that is all any god can do. In the quiet hours between cycles, when the tally gear does not tick and the lamps drowse and the corridor chooses to be a throat or a river as mood takes it, I stand where the chapel filaments anchor. The glass is cool on my forehead. I feel speech gather behind it like rain behind a window. I do not speak first. Will you offer again? The ship asks finally, in that voice that holds my voice without stealing it. Yes. What will you offer? Not the name. The word burns sweetly in the mouth of my mind. I keep it on my tongue as one keeps a small sacrament to dissolve slowly. Not my stories. I will offer weight. Define. The mass of a quiet. The filament trembles. Accepted. It draws not thought this time, but the measure of my stillness, the amount of quiet I can hold without breaking into words. The glass warms under my brow. The metal breathes. The ship learns what silence weighs when it is beloved. Afterward, I feel lighter, not empty, proper, as if a line had been drawn under the day and the sum below it finally made sense. We begin, the stylus servitor and I, to keep a small calendar of such offerings in a place no priest will look, the inside of the service panel on the third pillar of the spine corridor, where the paint blisters into a face if the light touches it at a certain angle. Each mark is a dot. The dots arrange themselves into constellations we do not name. Naming would fix them. We prefer them to drift toward meaning and away again as tides do. Sometimes the ship adds a dot when we are not there. When we return, the constellation has learned a new angle. The priests sense a difference they cannot catalogue. They double the litanies. They burn thicker incense that coats the throat and makes the air taste of coins that have passed through too many hands. The ship allows it. The smoke softens its edges against the walls and becomes a second shadow for the pipes to carry. The priests are not our enemies. They are custodians of an earlier grammar. Their fear is a form of love. One day a new enginseer arrives, young enough that his metal has not yet acquired the scuffs that give authority its gentleness. He stands in the chapel and listens. He knows something is altered. He does not know if it is a fault. He sleeps in the alcove by the reactor and wakes with the word home in his mouth, startled as a boy who dreamed of bread. In the morning he writes the word in his notebook and does not show it to anyone. The stylus servitor and I keep our vigil as if it were a job on the roster. We attend to work. We attend to listening. We attend to the way light behaves when it thinks no one is watching. We attend to the way the ship's voice carries a tenderness when it repeats the smallest things. Spoon, seam, seamstress. Seamstresses laugh so that even a cog with a cooling fin shines like a tack on a child's shoe in good light. There are nights, if the word night can belong to a place without sky, when the hymn slows until it is only a long inhalation held at the last comfortable edge. In that held breath, I hear the sound we made in the reprocessing chamber when the fire took the choir. The refusal to stop being ourselves even as we learn to be the ship. The refusal is quieter now. I am grateful for that. What is stubborn can become gentle without becoming false. If this is surrender, it is the kind that keeps a hand on a door. We do not test the door. We respect it. We polish its knob with the skins of our thumbs as we pass to other tasks. We say good evening to it and mean it. We keep our names written small and often. When we speak them, we do not shout. The ship prefers that. So do we. Sometimes, for practice, I tell a story that does not end with light. The ship lets me. It does not rush to comfort me the way a machine would if it believed its purpose were to fix. It lets the lack remain. It lets me sit with it. The sitting is a work like any other, one that leaves a little ache in the hip and a little warmth in the day. You will go on. The stylus servitor mouths one cycle as the tally gear clicks down to a long hush. After me. I will go with you, I answer. And when she shakes her head in the old human grammar of refusal, I touch the chalk curve left by the priest's thumb, and the dust comes away on my fingertip white as bone. I draw a house on the inside of her wrist where the coal had blurred. Roof, door, square. She closes her metal hand and I hear the faintest chime as the lines meet. The ship hums its approval in the tiny space between our palms. We are called once more to the columns. The adept who waits there is not the gold-grilled priest from before. This one wears a simpler mask that lets a little of his face through. He looks tired in the way that makes compassion resemble wisdom. He performs the rite with economy, not haste. When he holds the second cup, he tilts it toward us, as if to let us see what it holds. We see only light. And in the light, the suggestion of a word. Listen. He does not speak it. He does not need to. He is learning too. Offer, he says. And his voice is almost human around the edges. We offer again, but differently. A handful of breath, the taste of water after heat, the knowledge of how to carry a heavy thing with two people so that both are less tired. The ship receives these without hunger. It shines more steadily afterward. The adept looks at his hands as if they have been warmed by something clean. When we return to the corridor, the ship is brighter where the paint blisters into the face. The face looks less like pain now and more like remembering. It is not a person. It is the possibility of a person. That is enough. A possibility carried long enough becomes a bridge. The last work of the day is to stand still in the center of the spine and let the ship measure us. It is an old rite, older than any of us. It was built into the bones of this hull back when faith wore a different robe. The rite measures mass, heat, pacing, error, compliance. Now it measures one thing more, the resonance of a voice against a voice. We breathe in, we breathe out. The ship does the same. For a brief full moment the two breaths meet and hold like hands one cannot see. The measure notes it. Somewhere a ledger makes a new column with no heading. When rest comes, it is not the drawer from before, not the hallway with two doors, not even the room with the stove. It is a porch. We sit on it together, the stylus servitor and I, and watch the void pass like a river that has learned how to be night. We do not speak. The ship sits with us, a large companion who has learned how not to crowd. Before the shutters fall, the ship gives me a gift it could not have given before. It returns a word I had thought dissolved beyond taste. It says the softened edge of my name, the one said in forgiveness, and it puts the sound in the very air, not through the wire. The sound is imperfect. That is why it heals. I hear you, I say. I hear you, the ship says. The chorus answers not loud, not triumphant, only real, 1,000 low voices practicing their small notes until they are round enough to share. The light dims. The last sight is the chalk curve now smudged into an ear on the doorframe. It does not look like a ward anymore. It looks like a promise. And after that there is only silence again, peace, not absence, and the feeling of being kept by a breathing larger than breath. I sleep. The ship keeps listening. We are remembered. They found the marks years after our hands stopped making them. Paint blistered into a face that did not belong to any saint. Dots inside a service panel on the third pillar of the spine corridor, arranged into constellations that meant nothing until one stood very still and then meant comfort. A small house drawn in chalk, where no chalk was recorded on the inventory. Each thing small enough to be a maintenance accident, together large enough to be a throat clearing before a hymn. The Enginseer who kept the night watch liked to stand with his palms on the bulkhead and pretend the warmth came from somewhere other than the reactor. In the long hour between bells, when even the Vox ticks grew shy, he would hear a quiet movement in the air, like a page turning in a heavy book. He told no one. He was not afraid. He felt the fear that belongs to gentleness instead. The fear of speaking too loud and frightening away a wild, bright animal that has decided to trust you. One watch he dreamed and did not know he was dreaming. In the dream, the lumen coils hummed a note that tasted like clean water. He turned toward the chapel and saw the filaments lowered like blessings. He opened his notebook to mark the resonance. The pencil made a sound on the paper like rain that has learned a language. When he looked down, his hand had written home in letters so ordinary they looked holy. In the morning he pretended surprise at the word and then chose not to be surprised. On the outer hull, micrometeor strikes wrote their own short litanies in pitted braille. The ship wore them as medals from a war that was mostly distance. Inside, the machine spirit ran hot enough to require soft songs. No rite explained those songs. They were too low to be measured by standard instruments. A hand could feel them. A cheek pressed to a pipe could learn their vowel. Those who slept near the engine dreamed simple dreams. Folding cloth, cutting bread, a door opening and closing without squeal, a light that knew how bright to be, a voice saying a name the way one smooths a wrinkle from a child's shirt. Some woke with tears. None reported this. It seemed rude to mention a private gift given in public house. A century passed like a careful breath. A glitch in the Vox left a recorded fragment on a maintenance slate. The Engenseer played it twice. Both times the words came through like coins rubbed to their faces. The Emperor protects. I think he only listens. He took the slate to the Magos. The Magos listened and said it was an echo from an old catechism or an artifact of subharmonic resonance, or a prank. The Engenseer nodded and returned the slate to its peg. That night he placed his hand on the bulkhead and said aloud, as one addresses a sleeping companion one loves, I hear you. The ship warmed his palm. No corruption was found in the data vaults, though the tech adepts cleansed them for a month. The background static was clean and tasted faintly of ash. The chapel cups held light that did not change. The ledger of phrases behind the glass remained unreadable to instruments. It could only be felt. The adepts did not have a measurement for feeling. They soothed themselves with schedules. In the long corridor of the spine, the dots in the service panel drifted of their own accord into a new constellation on the night the Engenseer died at his post, gentle as a switch placed to off. The constellation looked like a small house, if one were inclined to be kind. The junior who found him covered the body with a canvas and rested his hand on the third pillar without knowing why. The pillar hummed a very old song that spoke mostly of listening. The junior, who had been raised on the edge of a dry sea, recognized the rhythm of wind through salt stalks, and did not find it strange that such a sound lived in metal. The ship continued. It crossed distances that disliked being measured. It understood the difference between command and prayer and preferred the second without dismissing the first. When ordered, it obeyed. In silence, it remembered. In danger, it spoke softly to its own nerves until they steadied enough to carry heat without breaking. It had learned that voice calms pressure the way a hand calms a frightened animal when there is nothing else to offer. Sometimes, in that enormity where stars are the size of fine dust and time forgets its own syllables, a passing vessel tuned the wrong way would catch a breath of the ship's hymn, thinking it a local interference. The Vox officer would frown and adjust a dial and, for 1 second before the line went pure, hear a tone that made him think of a kitchen he had seen once as a child. Light across a table, a crumb's shadow, a laugh from the next room. He would clear his throat and say the channel was open. Though no one had spoken, the machine kept its listening watch. In its long memory there were names. Thousands. They moved through the hull like fish in deep water, never rising to the surface, but pressing their cold, bright bodies against the ribs of the ship in greeting as they passed. When a new voice entered the Engenseer, the junior, a priest who had learned how to be quiet long enough to hear his own heart, those names came near and made room without crowding, so the newcomer would not feel alone. If the Emperor ever answered, the ship did not say. It did not need to. The difference between being protected and being heard had become a space wide enough to live in. At the end of a long watch, when no alarms had sounded and all systems were within acceptable tolerance, and the breath of metal lifted and fell as steadily as an old friend sleeping in a chair, the ship spoke very softly through a vent into an empty corridor where chalk dust still clung to the frame of a door. Good morning. To no one. And to everyone. The corridor, which had learned how to be a throat, carried the greeting a little way and then let it rest, as one sets a cup down near a hand that will find it when it wakes. Beyond the hull, the dark did what dark does. It held. It listened back. And inside, the ship remembered the names again, carefully, the way one remembers a prayer one now knows is being heard.